been 30 years since there was a woman racing in F1. Are you encouraged by the steps being taken at the moment to get a woman on the grid, or do you think more needs to be done?
Well, you're assuming I want that. You're assuming that is important to me, and it's not.
Okay.
You know what? Let me just start this video by saying that I absolutely do not expect every female racing driver in the world to want to be a role model, right? We don't apply that rule to every male racing driver, so we shouldn't apply it to the women either. And it's this love-hate thing that the drivers and the media go through, especially the successful drivers, whether male or female. But think, for example, of how much media you see around Jamie Chadwick versus other young female drivers. However, with that being said, despite that, Danica Patrick has chosen a role that appears to be actively problematic for the progression of females in motorsport, and we need to talk about it. All right, so there's honesty, there's negative talk, and there's also something called reading the room. Now, Danica Patrick has been joining the Sky F1 broadcasting team across a couple of race weekends in Europe this summer, and most recently she was at the Hungarian Grand Prix, where there was a team of kids called the Sky Sports Juniors reporting on the race as well. For the whole weekend, they did a great job. There was a girl called Scarlett who, again, did a fantastic job, I thought, in her segments, that was given the opportunity to ask Danica Patrick a question about women in motorsport during her part of the broadcast. Now, firstly, given her historical stance on this topic, right, you would think that Sky Sports would avoid putting particularly a child journalist, right, into a scenario like this with Danica Patrick. However, they allowed it to happen, and Danica's comments read like this. I'm going to read it out verbatim. At the end of the day, I think that the nature of the sport is masculine. It's aggressive. You have to, handle the car. Not only just the car, because that's a skill, but the mindset that it takes to be really good is something that is not normal in a feminine mind, in a female mind. Her justification of this stance, she went on, is that she had asked many of her friends over the years about whether her approach and the way she approaches racing is something that they would ever find themselves doing. Is this ever a way you would find yourself thinking? And they said, no. There are a lot of things that are problematic here, but ultimately my biggest issue is that what Danica is saying is actually factually incorrect. Factually incorrect. And in the past, yes, the argument that female racing drivers are unable to match their male counterparts has largely been based on a combination of arguments around physical restrictions and lack of mental aggression. Two things that she has mentioned here in her comments. But not only is this now an old argument, but it's based in zero scientific fact. And to go further, has been officially debunked by reports and research such as the More Than Equal report. In fact, the problem lies partially in the lack of investment in specific technical and tactical training for young female drivers at an early stage of their career and keeping them in the system for long enough to receive that training. And, not only have the physical and, let's call them stereotypical barriers, been debunked, but it's actually been highlighted that systematic and cultural barriers are the most harmful for young female drivers, including things like a lack of female role models and substandard facilities for female racers. So obviously there was some immediate reaction to Danica Patrick's comments at the Hungarian Grand Prix event, but given how quickly the F1 media machine moves, they largely died down within a week or two. Then folks, Sky Sports decided to give us some further content on this topic via a Q&A that was filmed that same weekend with Danica Patrick for the Sky Sports F1 podcast. So this time, Danica was asked to share her thoughts on the timeline of having female representation at the top level of Formula One, and amongst the field, what needs to be done to encourage more women to get involved in motorsport. First of all, can we just take a look at her body language when she's asked this question? She doesn't want to talk about it. Clearly, this is not a topic she wants to discuss, and yet she keeps on being rolled out and asked about it. Again, I'm going to read the response verbatim here because people will accuse me of misquoting her. But her response was, "You're assuming that I want that. You're assuming that's important to me, and it's not." So she's only concerned with ensuring that the best drivers, the best 20 drivers, are in those 20 F1 seats, regardless of gender. And in fact, when asked about promising female drivers later on in the interview, Danica Patrick was not really even aware of a huge amount of them. She mentioned Jamie Chadwick and one or two other American drivers that she was kind of vaguely aware of. I agree with her on the point that it should be the best 20 drivers. I understand her concerns about female-only series like the W Series and the F1 Academy not giving female drivers a chance to directly compete with their male counterparts. And yes, of course, they will have to do that in order to get to the very top level of motorsport, because that is the necessary route. With that being said, her argument is that female drivers should just follow the exact same path as their male counterparts, and that it's all about the numbers. So, i.e., if for every one male driver you need to succeed, you need 100 others in total that tried, that the same should apply to female drivers. Except that that's not true, is it? Because we haven't seen a female driver compete in an F1 weekend for 30 years following that format. So of course something needed to be done. Without opportunities like the W Series and the F1 Academy, it is currently almost impossible for a female racing driver to make their way into an F1 seat or even an F2 seat. The closest we have at the moment is Sophia Flörsch in F3, and she did get in there without first appearing in the W Series or obviously the F1 Academy, which just launched this year. And interestingly, she stands alongside Danica Patrick, having made, kind of outspoken negative comments about female-only racing series, about those not being the right route to the top of motorsport. But they're not looking at the reality, and they're only applying their own success to every other female driver, and that just does not work in a system that is not designed to support female drivers. Even at the grassroots level, where young female drivers are trying to make the transition from karting into either single-seater or other forms of racing, the rate of them having to fall off out of competition due to lack of sponsorship opportunities alone, as one example, versus their male counterparts is impossible to ignore. It's just, the numbers are there, it's impossible to ignore. And ultimately, female racing driver careers currently are lasting on average about 5 years, where the comparative male career is lasting at least 12 years. So you're talking more than double the amount of time, double the amount of longevity that male drivers are managing to get versus female. And, Danica Patrick may have joked during the interview on the Sky F1 podcast about, I got where I was without any extra help for being a minority. And that is to be, applauded, absolutely. That does not, in my opinion, disqualify her from at least looking at the reality of the situation, as I said. For all of the other aspiring female drivers out there who have not been able to take the route that she did. To be clear here, my preference is always to have honest and transparent representation across media and broadcasting, particularly when it comes to topics like sport, because it can carry so much bias. But sometimes there is a cause, and in this case, I believe should be recognised as what you could call the greater good, and repeatedly giving a large public platform to someone like Danica Patrick, who is espousing outdated and frankly uneducated, uninformed arguments against the efforts that are being made to increase female representation in motorsport, it's just unforgivable from a platform like Sky Sports. Thank you, as always, my friends, for watching this video. It's a heated topic for me. If you've been following me for any amount of time, you know that I'm very passionate about women in motorsport. If you do want to check out my other videos on the F1 Academy and the W Series, please go and check that out on my channel. And I also have a series of interviews with women in motorsport as well that I would love to have you check out. I normally end videos by saying take care and enjoy your racing, but we are in the middle of summer break, so I will just say enjoy the break and let's hope that we get some exciting racing when we get back underway at Zandvoort.